studying astrological transits, a lot of times, a lot of people will analyze aspects in a vacuum. And what that means is they're analyzing just the aspect from the house and the sign it's at to the connection with the other celestial body in the house and sign it's at, and then they overlay that and apply that to their birth chart. But astrology is so much more complex and detailed than that, and that's why you can use intuition and spiritual connection as your driving force in astrology, because indirectly, all parts of the zodiacal chart affect our lives. We need to look at each zodiacal house and sign as if it's a chapter in the part of a larger book. And that book is all 12 houses and all 12 signs together. You are the book. And these little events that happen in our lives are sentences or paragraphs in the structure of chapters in our lives, which are then house and sign correspondences. We have been going through an intense T-square this week between the Sun and its fall in Libra opposite Chiron retrograde in Aries, with a T-square expression bar connecting Jupiter in Cancer. So, what that suggests is that we are being faced directly with the summation of our childhood wounds, and the best way to integrate it, the best way to move forward, is to express ourselves in the way that Jupiter has been teaching us in the Cancerian area of our chart. However, on October 17th, which this is the cosmological narrative for, Mercury in Scorpio will be in the superior trine position to the North Node in Pisces, concurrently at the same time that the moon in the superior position in Virgo will make a sextile to both the Mercury and Mars conjunction in Scorpio. And as I said, this is the cosmological narrative for October the 17th. So again, going back to what we began with, we have had this week that's been very much flavored and driven by this T-square. This T-square opposition is essentially our egoic body, our egoic structure, which is seeking to bring harmony and balance to our relationships with people, money, environments, even relationships with ourselves realistically, depending on where Libra's at in your chart. So we're really focused this month and this season, obviously, on bringing balance to the Libran section of our chart. And so the sun represents our egoic body at this moment, at this place, at this time, right now. It is who you are right now when you are watching this video. And that egoic sense of identity is creating an opposition with Chiron retrograde. Now, Chiron is the summation of our childhood wounds that, as we face and integrate and resolve, empower us with essentially the superpower that is born out of conquering that trauma, that fear, that wound, whatever it may be, and whatever it may be for us specifically. The retrograde suggests that it's going to be a mental stimulus. It's an internal calculus that's happening. So even though our egoic body, our physical egoic body, as we weave through the day today, the 17th, as you know, this is for the cosmological narrative for the 17th, as our egoic body weaves through the day of the 17th, we're coming into an external opposition with something that is stimulating us to recall, reflect, and essentially have a reality check, an ego check. Where is our ego in terms of how it's integrating our childhood wounds? Are we still not stepping up enough and bringing enough Libran balance to our ego? Are we still letting that childhood wound that's resurging really step on us? Or alternatively, has our egoic body expanded too much and we need to bring ourselves back down, and that childhood wound is reminding us that we have a karmic place, that we have somewhere where our ego is supposed to be. It might not be there at this moment, but that's obviously the point of the evolutionary growth. Jupiter in Cancer, as the expression point of this T-square, has been teaching us that self-nurturing and self-mothering ourselves in the Cancerian area of our chart is likely going to be the best way to express the volatile energy of being exposed to our childhood wound. However, that's all happening as the bigger picture of this week goes on, and on the 17th, we'll have the aspect perfection of Mercury in Scorpio in the superior trine position to the North Node in Pisces. When Mercury's in Scorpio, Mercury is essentially walking around the house of our life, which is Scorpio for this sake of the analogy, this metaphor. Mercury is walking around the scorpionic area of our life, our home, and basically picking stuff off the floor. Oh my goodness, word salad today. Sorry, y'all. Mercury is going around the house picking stuff up and showing us things that still need to change. Going from this room to this room and saying, hey, you forgot to clean this room. Hey, all this crap in the corner, you got to get this out of here. This room isn't going to look good with all this crap piled in the corner. That's essentially metaphorically what Mercury is doing when he's in Scorpio. And so that superior position trine suggests that the North Node is working in benefit for that information that's being brought from the underworld, from the Scorpionic area of our chart. Now, the superior position trine to the North Node suggests that whatever this information that's coming about that we need to have a drive and act on to make transformation, to make change, which is the prescription of Scorpio whenever planets move through it, it is directly in accordance with where our soul is growing. The North Node is where we experience trials, tribulations, resistance, and they're the kind of moments and events that when we work through them, when we get to the other side, we can clearly and retroactively look back and see how we have evolved from before the situation, before the experience, before the feelings, and where we are now. So whatever Mercury is bringing up that needs to be transformed, we might not see it in its clear-cut context, but it's inevitably bringing us closer to where our soul is transforming in this life and where we are consciously growing and expanding and being asked to push beyond the comforts of our South Node. Now, we also at the same time have the moon in the superior position sextile, which is of the nature of Venus, the superior position sextile from Virgo, and it is going to first make a connection with Mercury in Scorpio, and then, an hour or two later, we'll connect with Mars in Scorpio. And essentially what that suggests is when the moon is in Virgo, our emotions become very focused on wanting to feel things that have a label. I think that's the best way to understand it. Virgo wants to place things in where they're supposed to go, wants to articulate, wants to make sure things go in the correct filed bin. Sometimes information comes about via Mercury and it doesn't have a label. And so we sit there and we're like, well, what do we do with this information? Especially when the moon's in Virgo, it can put us into positions like we had yesterday where we had this quincux between Pluto and Aquarius direct motion and Neptune retrograde, where there was information provided to us, but we're not 100% sure how to act on it going forward. So when the moon is in Virgo making this harmonious sextile, which is of the nature of Venus, to Mercury in Scorpio and Mars in Scorpio, it suggests that our emotional body is resonating with whatever the change that Mercury is bringing to our attention. We're emotionally resonating with it because it makes sense, it's useful, it's practical. Even if we're not necessarily on board to do the change, to do the transformation, we understand why it needs to happen. And that's going to be reflected in the Virgoan section of our chart, but the change is actually happening in the Scorpionic area of our chart. And when the moon makes that harmonious sextile to Mars in Scorpio, it then suddenly means we connect and we emotionally understand the information that Mercury is bringing to us, and then we become emotionally driven to make changes on what Mercury gave to us. So all of that's happening, again, at the same time that the sun is opposing Chiron, our wound. So it's like, in my opinion, the sun is highlighting this wound for us to integrate, and it's quite likely that the source of this Aries-focused Chiron wound is actually sourced, its core root stem, the stem of the plant, it's actually in the Scorpionic area of our chart. We're being given a manifestation of our childhood wound through the lens of the Aryan section of our chart, but the source of that pain originates in the Scorpionic area of our chart. And so our emotional body is connecting and resonating intellectually on the 17th with this change that needs to happen. And it's not just emotionally resonating with it in the sense that it makes sense. We are then driven and want to actually work. We want to actually make the change. Think about the moon in Virgo. That means emotions grounded in a feminine, cold, earthy sign that wants to get work done. Earth signs want to concretize into this place. And Scorpio wants to transform. So we are emotionally wanting to get work done. And the work that we want to concretize is a transformative work in quality. Now, kind of going back to the beginning, we talked about Mercury in the superior trine position to the North Node in Pisces, and we talked about Chiron retrograde in Aries in the superior position opposition to the Sun and its fall in Libra. What's a trine? A trine's of the nature of Jupiter. What's an opposition? An opposition's of the nature of Saturn. So I always like to look at what's happening in the chart with those respective planetary rulers of the aspects. Well, At the time that all this is happening, Jupiter in Cancer will actually be making a harmonious trine, which is of the nature of Jupiter, in the superior position to Saturn retrograde in Pisces. And so, what that suggests is that usually, even though Saturn and Jupiter play against each other, one wants to expand and blow things up, one wants to diminish and decrease our opportunities in that area of our life for the sake of knowing that life just doesn't always go the way we want it to go. Essentially, Jupiter is using Saturn's lessons in order to show us how to better show up in the Cancerian area of our life. And in so doing so, there is a lot of transformation that needs to take place in the Scorpionic area of our chart. However, that pain is quite likely being reflected through the lens of the Aries section of our chart. So, for example, if you're like a Libra rising and Aries is your seventh house, it means that that chironic wound is just showing up through the lens of your karmic relationships, your one-on-one, your business relationships, your business partnerships, your open enemies, so to speak. Even if your chiron wound is, say, the first house of Libra, where you have this wound about actually being who you're supposed to be and putting the correct balance in, like, the effort you put in relationships versus the effort you put in yourself, that might then be showing up through other people. So again, the core root of the issue stems with an issue with self, but it's manifesting through other people and reminding you. So that's what we need to think about when Chiron's moving through Aries, especially in retrogradation where it's so mentally stimulus driven. That's just where our wound is being lensed through. It's not necessarily the source of the wound. The wound lies somewhere else. If you enjoy these spiritual and astrological narratives, I encourage you to join me for my weekly astrological and divination-based spiritual workshop, Consciousness, Conjunctions, and Conversations. You can sign up for the class at the link in my bio. It's an evergreen link, so even if the date's wrong, you're always signing up for the next week's class. You're always going to get an invite via email. It's limited to 10 seats per week, so you need to make sure you show up a couple minutes early. We go through the last week's transits and the following week's transits, and I teach you how to spiritually delineate where these transits and movements are taking place in your spiritual journey so that you can better integrate the lessons that the Creator and the gods have laid out for us, as well as make more sense of the trials, the tribulations, as well as the fun and the optimism that shows up in your life. The second quick thing is that if you're interested in doing a reading with me or any sort of other astrological service, because I actually offer a lot of them, not just basic readings, you can check that out at the menu that's posted to the top of my TikTok bio, top of my Instagram bio, or in the link tree in my bio. And you can message me on either of those apps or through the link tree in my bio. I have situational financial hardship pricing available. So if you are currently affected by the downturn in the economy, the global economy, that is, just shoot me a DM. Let me know your situation. We will work something out. We will cooperate, we'll collaborate, and I will make sure I get you booked for a reading, because astrology is a spiritual tool of consciousness evolution, not something just for people that have money. Money is a materium of this physical world. Astrology is not a materium of this physical world. It's a materium of the divine, and we are not going to act like one equates to the other. So please, I encourage you, if you were in a bit of a bind, message me, let me know your situation, we'll work something out. If I don't see my readings, if I don't see my DMs for a reading, if I don't see you in class this week, then I will see you for tomorrow's video about the weekend. You all have a wonderful, productive Thursday, and let's get into the cosmological narrative for this weekend tomorrow. See y'all later.